Today is your day with the provincial government. Earlier, you had the opportunity to ask questions in the dialogue with ministers sessions, and now you have the opportunity to bring your questions before the provincial cabinet. Before we get started, I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize some of the people who have made this event possible. The SUMA Convention Planning Committee, the SUMA staff, the Real District staff, and our wonderful AV team. How about another round of applause, please, and thank you. If you have won a silent auction prize last night and didn't pick it up, it will be waiting for you at the registration desk. After the bear pit, there will be a close-in prayer. Please spend a few moments of your valuable time with us to end off the official SUMA convention, sending off everyone in a a healthy way. Please and thank you. And if you want to stick around, your name will stand in the draw, and if your name is called, if you are not in the room, another name will be called. But that isn't your only chance to take something home, courtesy of SUMA. You can help shape Convention 2025 by taking the SUMA Convention Survey. SUMA will email the survey out, and by filling it out, you'll be entered to win. Note that the following closing prayer and prize draw, buses will be picking up delegates up outside of the ITC lobby. Now for the real reason we are here today, I'd like to call upon SUMA Executive Member Randy Donhauer to lead us through Bear Pit. For the remainder of the officials who are not on stage for this session, please join us now.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Randy Donhauer. I'm a city councillor from the city of Saskatoon and a SUMA board member. Welcome. Today I have the pleasure of moderating our famed Bear Pit session, which all of our membership looks forward to for the entirety of convention. It's your opportunity to ask our provincial cabinet questions about their policies and initiatives. If this is your first time at Bear Pit, I'd like to explain a little bit about how it works. For those of you that have been here before, this is just a reminder of the rules. Questions will only be taken from delegates with blue, yellow, orange, or gray name tags. And our staff will be checking your name tag when you go up to the mic to make sure that you're qualified to ask a question as a registered delegate. To ask a question, we'll get you to proceed to the microphone in a few minutes. I'll acknowledge you by the number posted on the microphone stand. And I'll remind you that we all have a role to play in creating a respectful environment. I also want to remind you I'm only going to allow one question at a time, and statements are not allowed. We will be enforcing these rules. You can't just get up and have a rant or a statement. You must have a question for the minister. You get 1 minute to ask your question. We have an hour and 15 minutes scheduled for the session. The reason your questions are limited to 1 minute is because we want to get as many questions in as we possibly can and take the opportunity that we have to ask questions directly of the Premier and the ministers as well. Each speaker will have 60 seconds. At 60 seconds, your microphone will be cut off by the sound guys, and there will be timers on the screen for your reference, so please pay attention to the timer and have your comments timed appropriately as well. We also ask respectfully for the cabinet ministers to limit their replies to 2 minutes, and there will be a timer on the screen for your reference as well. I'll ask each of you to turn your cell phone to vibrate, and I will say that this session is being recorded and live streamed, and so it will be available on the SUMA portal after the convention. Good morning, Mr. Premier. Sorry about that. Good. Now that we have the rules out of the way, let us please welcome the Honourable Scott Moe, Premier of Saskatchewan, and his cabinet. Can we give them a round of applause, please? Mr. Premier, I'll turn it over to you to introduce your cabinet this morning, please.
Good. Well, thank you very much and welcome, everyone. I hope you've had a good week at your conference here. And we really appreciate, just on behalf of Cabinet, the opportunity to come over here this morning. It gives us a very, very good insight in just a matter of just over an hour as to what the priorities are in communities right across this province. And so I want to thank you in advance for the questions that will come, and I want to thank you in advance for the opportunity that we'll have to work on resolutions to those questions, if not today, over the course of the next number of weeks and months. So thank you very much for that in advance. To my left, I have our Minister of Advanced Education from Saskatoon, Gord Wyant. To Gord's left, I have Joe Hargrave, our Minister of Saskatchewan Builds Corporation. Chris Tell is to his left. She's our Minister of Environment. Minister of Agriculture is next, Dave Merritt. Laurie Carr, our Minister of Highways. Jeremy Cockrell from North Battleford, our Minister of Education. Laura Ross is our Minister of Parks, Culture and Sport from our capital city of Regina. And Jeremy Harrison from Meadow Lake is our Minister of Trade, Export, Development and Immigration. Your minister is to my immediate right, and our minister is Don McMorris, the Minister of Government Relations, who has been here throughout most of the week. The Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance is Donna Harpower to his right. We have Dustin Duncan, our Minister of the Crown Investment Corporations. Who's to your right there, Dustin? Bronwyn Eyre, our Minister of Justice, first female Minister of Justice in the province. Paul Merriman is our Minister of Corrections and Policing. Everett Hindley is number 1 Minister of Health. Tim McLeod from Moose Jaw is number 1.1 Minister of Health, our Rural and Remote Mental Health and Addictions Minister, as well as Minister for Seniors, and is serving very well in that file. And down at the end is our Saskatchewan CFL Hall of Famer, Jean Mikowski, our Minister of Social Services.
Nice. Thank you very much, Mr. Premier. Let's give them all a hand. So we want to express our appreciation for the Premier and Cabinet in joining us today to answer the questions directly put to you from our hometowns. So we will now begin with questions. There's 4 microphones in the room. If you'd like to please line up at a microphone, I will say we will be asking the last question before the cutoff time. I'll give you 5 minutes notice. So if you do want to get a question in, go up now, because we do have a hard stop, and we'll be winding this session down at, I think it's, 12 noon. And so we'll be closing just a few minutes before 12 noon. So if you do have a question, make sure you get in line right away. And I saw a microphone number 2. Go ahead, please. Please state your name and the municipality that you're from, and then you have 2 minutes for your question.
Thank you. Tabitha Burr, Councillor for the Northern Village of Orange, as well as Chair for New North Sank Services. When our Premier boasts that this budget is all about facilitating growth within our communities, how then does the decrease of $16 million to the annual investment in northern transportation systems demonstrate that desire for growth? This action directly impacts our northern communities in their ability to ensure public safety for their residents, while impeding further economic growth and development in northern Saskatchewan. This action directly contravenes the TRC calls to action in that instead of closing the gaps in social health and economic outcomes that exist between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians, it actually highlights and broadens that gap.
All right.
You want me to
want
take
to take that?
Great.
Minister Carr.
Thank you very much for the question, and I'm really happy to address this on behalf of the Ministry of Highways. When we talk about the highway system throughout the province of Saskatchewan, it's important to understand that we don't have a specific budget for a specific region, so the southeast corner of the province doesn't have a set amount of dollars, as does the north not have a set amount of dollars. What she's talking about is last year we did spend $16 more than we're budgeting this year in our capital plan, and that was specifically for 2 major projects that took place. One was the Garrison Lake Road project, which is 95% done, as well as a major airport project that happened. Having said that, since 2008, the budget in 2007 was approximately $37 million. Our budget this year in the north is $73.5 million. So that is a significant increase over the years. And we have increased that budget throughout the province as well, not just in the north. Billions of dollars have been spent over the last number of years throughout the province. And just for comparison, if we take out the increase that actually happened last year on those two specific projects, in 22-23, the budget in the north was just over $70 million. And this year, it's $73.5 million. So taking out those extra projects that were done, we actually do have an increase in the north to capital projects, and we're really proud of the work that we're doing up there.
Thank you, Minister Carr. I saw the gentleman at microphone 4 first, so I'll go to 4 and then back over to 1. Microphone 4, please introduce yourself and the community you represent.
Calvin Shapansky, Mayor of the Town of Strasbourg. Thank you, Mr. Premier and Cabinet, for giving us this opportunity today. I also want to thank you for the grants and the funding that have been made available to us for infrastructure projects such as wastewater, water, parks, etc. Now, these projects are very important, but I want to ask why there is no funding available for purchasing fire equipment or building fire halls. I know you were lobbying the feds to include fire halls in the ISIP grant, but that has all disappeared. In yesterday's federal budget, there was again nothing for fire. Fire protection is required by municipalities to give to the residents. The fire chiefs of Saskatchewan sent out a survey to municipalities in the province, and 38 communities said they will need a fire hall in the next 5 years. This is a province-wide issue for an essential service that is required for us to provide. The feds are not helping, so what can the provincial government do to help? The gas tax is great, but wouldn't even cover engineering. Revenue sharing is used to keep existing infrastructure maintained and updated. Help is needed. I ask, could a consultation process with government, fire chiefs, municipalities, etc. be put together to come to a solution? We need help to protect our residents.
Thank you. Minister.
You want to start, Premier, or no?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, and certainly have had it before. There it is. Keep talking until the mic comes on. Had it before. It's come up in other years, SUMA bear pits, as well as SARM, too, would raise the same issue. The ISIP program, which is sunset now, is a program that we and the federal government, along with municipal associations, would finally agree on. The federal government had a large say and for some reason would not allow fire halls to be part of the ISIP funding envelope. We pushed for that and are certainly pushing for it in the next iteration of ISIP. We learned as of yesterday that that isn't happening. In fact, there are no dollars for any infrastructure programs that we really feel are important in the province. But that is certainly why we think that no strings attached for the gas tax, which are starting to creep in from the federal level, certainly will not be for municipal revenue sharing. So that goes to the municipality to set their priorities, and I would hope in some jurisdictions, I know fire halls have been a priority, so that would be the other piece. And the other piece that hasn't been, we put in place mainly because of the pandemic was the MEAT program, and I know that certainly serviced a lot of communities, and a lot of communities use that money for fire hall. We're not opposed to sitting down with your association, SARM, various communities to look at what could be done in the future as far as any specific program, but right now we're pretty locked in with municipal revenue sharing at a 14% increase and the gas tax, which the federal government won't allow us to call gas tax anymore. The Canada Community Building Fund, I believe it is, are really the two main avenues that we have right now to deal with that. And it's not because we're anti-fire hall. We understand the absolutely amazing work that volunteer fire services do throughout the province from community to community. But is there a specific fund to fund infrastructure for that need? No, there isn't. It needs to be grouped in with what we do on MRS and gas tax.
Thank you, Minister McMorris. I'll go to microphone number 1 and then we'll come back to 3. Go ahead.
Councillor Brennan with the town of Lumsden. So it's been said that libraries are like the living rooms of society. They're not simply warehouses of books, rather they're places of inclusivity, well-being, and enrichment. And with the increases in social stressors such as, but not limited to, inflation, high interest rates, homelessness, mental health, and addictions, people are relying more and more on their local libraries, on the environments and the services. So the pressure on library output demands is increasing, and yet the provincial funding remains static. So as a consequence, municipalities are then picking up the additional costs to keep our libraries operational. So my question is, how does the provincial government plan on leveraging our strong and growing economy to financially support our local libraries?
Just thank you for the question. Certainly, as I've been able to tour around the province and meet with different municipalities and school divisions, certainly we understand that libraries do play an important role in many of your communities all around the province. As everyone in this room is well aware, we've got certainly several priorities in education over the last year that we're working to address and ensure that our pre-K to 12 system continues to be supported with increased funding and more support, and especially the multi-year funding support that we've now worked on with our school boards across the province. When it comes to library funding, I know I've had conversations with several specific municipalities about various concerns about library funding. We're going to continue to work with the library organizations, whether that's a regional branch or whether it's the municipal libraries that we have in the province. Certainly we understand libraries are important. Again, in this year's budget, addressing some of the other priorities that we have, but again, continuing to fund our library system to the tune of about $12 million provincially every single year. And certainly I think there's opportunities for conversations in years going forward on how we support libraries in communities of all sizes.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to microphone number 3. Your name and your municipality, please.
Thank you. Cheryl Statichuk, City of Regina, Councillor. I have a question regarding the Diefenbaker irrigation project that was just announced not too long ago. I've had a number of emails and calls from residents who are concerned about our water supply. As most people here know, is that 60% of Saskatchewan's drinking water does come from the South Saskatchewan River system, and that includes Regina and Moose Jaw through the Buffalo Pound. And it also provides, that South Saskatchewan River system provides power for 10 hydroelectric stations along the way. Now, we know that the amount of water, because of drought, because of receding glaciers in the Rocky Mountains, we know that the amount of water coming into Lake Diefenbaker has declining. And, oh shoot, I had 2 questions.
Can you get a question out, please, quick? You gotta go.
There's 2 questions. What kind of agreements or negotiations are you going to have with communities that depend on the drinking water to ensure that we're going to have safe supply? And the second one, what kind of environmental impact studies, especially climate change modeling into the future, will you be looking at?
Thank you. Thank you. Water Security Agency has done an awful lot of work on this project and the apportionment of water. There is a 1969 apportionment agreement with the Prairie Provinces that 50% of the water coming through Alberta has to flow through Saskatchewan, and the same flows through to Manitoba as well. Water Security Agency folks have been very diligent on water supply. To give you an example, Lake Diefenbaker Reservoir has more water in it than all the reservoirs in Alberta combined. A meter of water in Lake Diefenbaker will provide a city of 300,000 people water for 18 years. So Water Security Agency has done an excellent job at securing water. Lake Diefenbaker right now is over a meter higher than it was last year at this time. So we are obviously watching our reservoir levels, and I'm very confident that the work that the Water Security Agency folks have done in maintaining that the communities that are utilizing that water and need that water will definitely have water for the long-term future.
Thank you, Minister. Just before we go on to the next question, I did want to say, first of all, it's very hard for us to hear Cabinet up here, and sometimes it's hard to hear when people are talking, so I don't know if anything can be done about the sound on stage, but it's actually very difficult for us to hear when Cabinet's talking. And second, with these lights, this is for our technical crew, it's very hard for us to see the timer at the back of the room. I'm not sure if that can be changed to a different color or not. It's a very faint green, and with these lights, it's very hard to see that timer. I will go to the next question. Microphone number 1. Could you please state your name and your municipality? And you do have 1 question and 1 minute. Microphone number 1, we need it turned on. There you go.
Testing. There? First of all, yay, Moose Jaw Warriors. Thank you. My nephew plays on that team, homeboy from Cumberland House, Saskatchewan. Kitatamiskat now, I greet you all. I am from Deputy Mayor Veronica Fable of Cumberland House. I know I'm not supposed to say a statement or anything like that, but this is very important. I'm sorry. On September 3rd, 1774, a European explorer and fur trader set foot on an island in northeast of Saskatchewan.
I do need you to state a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
This will go to the Minister of Environment regarding the Saskatchewan River Delta. And Cumberland House is the oldest settlement in Saskatchewan in Western Canada. This year we celebrate 250 years. I just like to state that. So land resource users, elders, knowledge keepers have always had advocated for the Delta. So the Delta Stewardship and Water Management Committee continue to advocate and would gladly present this to the ministry on
You have 10 seconds.
how the water management beyond the E.B. Campbell Dam can be managed to sustain the rest of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba, the Cumberland House Delta. And we stand here, our community, and the rest of Saskatchewan to advocate for the Delta.
Yeah, thank you. Was there a question there, or okay?
Yeah.
Minister Merritt.
I'll say we'd gladly meet with you on this. Water security folks are at the back, just over here on the right side by the main door, but we'd gladly meet with you and have a discussion.
Thank you, Minister. And I need my mic left on during the morning if we possibly could for the sound crew. Microphone number 2, could I get your name, your municipality? You get one question, no statements allowed, you get 1 minute. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amanda Klitsch and I'm from the city of Humboldt. What is the plan to build capacity for addictions treatment and supports in rural communities that are without access to supports in urban centers? Individuals in rural communities lack transportation and often the resources to navigate services that aren't in the communities in which they live. Do you have a plan to increase resources to communities or increase transportation needs so individuals can get the care that they need?
Thank you.
Test? There we go.
Yeah, you're good. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the question, Amanda. So I guess I would start by just talking a little bit about the announcement that we made last October, which is the Action Plan for Mental Health and Addictions. It has 3 pillars, 3 key pillars in that plan. The first is to expand capacity across the province to add at least 500 more addictions treatment spaces. The second pillar of the plan is to make it easier for individuals to access those treatment spaces. And the third pillar is to transition to a recovery-oriented system of care. So your question was with specific regard to addictions treatment availability in rural. And thank you for the question. What we're doing with the expansion of capacity in those additional 500 treatment spaces is we are expanding those spaces across the entire province of Saskatchewan and across the continuum of care. So some of those spaces will be detox spaces, some would be inpatient treatment, some will be virtual spaces, some will be transitional or recovery living spaces. Across the continuum of care, we will have new spaces, and across the geography of the province, we will be adding treatment facilities. So the way that process has worked is through a request for proposals, an RFP. The first 150 spaces were awarded. We've actually announced 183 treatment spaces of the 500 target already. Communities or facilities, programs, providers can apply through that process. It's now a request, an RFSQ process, but they can apply through that process. If they're a provider of addictions treatment, they become pre-qualified, and then the government, through the Ministry of Health and SHA, will contract those spaces. So wherever we have need across the province, we can target specifically where on the continuum of care the need is. Do we need detox spaces? Do we need inpatient? Or where geographically do we need spaces? Do we need them in rural? Do we need them in urban? And so far, of the 183 we've added, we have a mix of both. There were 60 spaces added in Lumsden. We have spaces in North Battleford, spaces in Estevan. Across the province, we're going to target the need so that every geographic region is served. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much, Minister. I have microphone 4, and then I saw 2, then 1. So microphone 4, can I get your name and your municipality, please?
My name's Jerry Haney from New North Stank Services.
Thank you.
I have a question for the cabinet here. How will they embrace the UNDRIP and TRC recommendations?
Thank you. UNDRIP and the TRC recommendations. Mr. McMorris?
I'll take a swing at it. I don't know if I'll hit the ball on this one, but I'll take a swing at it in that. UNDRIP is the United Nations declaration that the United Nations obviously passed. The federal government has looked at it. It isn't necessarily specific to any one jurisdiction or mandated to Saskatchewan. We have gone through just a engagement process to look at the consultation policy framework because it tends to move towards that. In that review of the consultation policy framework, we've adopted some of the language of UNDRIP, but not all of it, because some of the language in UNDRIP would be very problematic, we think, moving forward. So that it is addressed partially through the consultation policy framework that was reviewed and changed as of January 1st. So any projects moving forward now has to go through the new framework in order to proceed.
And thank you, Mr. McMorris. We have Minister Harrison.
Sure, yeah, thanks so much. You know, one of the areas where we, I think, have really made very significant tangible progress is around economic reconciliation, one of the basket areas in the TRC calls to action. We move forward with the Indigenous Investment Finance Corporation as an example, one of the very first jurisdictions in the country that has in place a program that is going to facilitate First Nation businesses, governments, individuals to really have meaningful equity ownership positions in projects that are being developed in traditional territories and across the province. This is really reconciliation in action, and we've heard that directly from First Nations leaders. I would point, Jim Lemag has done a great job on a whole number of these fronts. We've had some very, very significant and productive and is going to result in genuine benefits for First Nations right across the province. And that really, is showing our commitment, I think, as government working directly with Indigenous First Nation Métis leaders across the province to make sure that we have in place programs and the willingness and desire and the mechanisms to have success economically for Indigenous Saskatchewanians.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to microphone number 2, then 1, then 4.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My question is directed at the Minister responsible for Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency. It's recently been brought to the attention of Northwest leadership that a lifelong resident who works for SPSA has been uprooted and moved to a Saskatoon office. Mr. Robert Gardner was a lifelong resident of Iowa Cross and served the region well. And my question is, why would someone such as Robert Gardner be uprooted, who knows the communities, knows the region, and he's the forest fire fighting season has been devastating last year, and I think it's even going to be worse this year. So someone such as Robert Gardner, who knew the territory, was moved from that office into Saskatoon. So can somebody please reconsider that move and get him back to where he actually belongs?
Thank you. Minister Merriman.
Thanks very much for the question. I'm not aware of the specific move from one individual into Saskatoon, but I certainly look into it, understanding that it's very important for somebody that has local knowledge of the area and of the community and that the community respects. Again, I'm not too, I don't have the specifics on this, but the president of the SPSA is here in the room, so I will check with him and we'll connect with you right away. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Microphone number 1. Can I get your name and your municipality? Then you have 1 minute.
Norma Stemberg, Town of Radisson. The Town of Radisson was hit with a bill at the end of 2023 for the operational shortfall of provincial Sask housing. So question for Minister of Social Housing. We supplied the land free for the capital build. Why are we paying for the operational shortfall when we have no say in operations? And explain why there is a shortfall when the mortgage should have been paid 4 years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. I'm not exactly sure what this particular situation is about. It may be a building that is coming off agreement that had a agreement for 25 years where the mortgage, there was a subsidy for the mortgage side of things. But we can certainly look into that. The officials are here today and get some more information about that particular situation.
Thank you. Minister Carr.
So I'm just going to touch base on this because I had this portfolio earlier, and our community is one of the communities that has an agreement like this. Way back when Sask Housing was formed, there were agreements that were made place long before any of the councils that were here today. Some of them had options, and one of the options was to have that to cover the funding shortfall. And so it would have been a historical item that took place that your community agreed to at that point in time. But of course, Minister McCulsey is definitely going to go back and see if it still applies to your community. But it is definitely historical, and some communities are tied to these agreements.
Thank you, Minister Carr. So I've got microphone 4, then 2. Ma'am, are you in line at number 3? You are? Okay, then I'm going to go to 3 after that. Microphone 4, can I get your name and your question, please? And your
Yes, Heather Hind with Grand Coulee. The other day, Premier Moe spoke in regards to the times for surgeries and extra beds have been improved, which we thank you for that. The one concern in regards to that, though, and dealing with mental health, is the area and the wait time still for things such as biopsies while you're waiting for the find out if you have cancer or not. The question is, what is being done for those types of services to be improved?
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather, for the question. And yeah, just a couple of items there. So number one, on the surgical wait list, we are making some progress on that, significant progress. We had numbers build up, as many other provinces did, I would say probably every other province did, during the pandemic when non-emergent services were paused. So that included a number of surgeries. Our surgical backlog increased to about 36,000 patients waiting at the height of the pandemic. We've since been able, through the great work of our surgical teams across this province, been able to reduce that and get that down to 27,000 people, give or take. But obviously still more work to do because we need to ensure that that people are getting access to their surgery as quickly as they can. And we have invested some additional dollars into that surgical capacity in recent budget years, including in this budget year. We're going to be spending about $670 million on surgeries to get more surgeries done than ever before. We hit a record a couple of years ago. We're anticipating, we don't have the numbers yet from the last fiscal year in terms of how many surgeries we've completed province-wide, but we expect that to be a record-breaking number. And we're targeting an even higher number of surgeries, 100,000 surgeries being completed this new fiscal year. On the biopsy piece, so the other part of the budget as well, and I'm going to speak just a little bit about the breast health initiatives that we've undertaken or will be undertaking. We made a significant investment or announcement around an investment to establish and create a breast health center here in Regina, much like we have in Saskatoon, that will serve not just women in Regina, but right across southern Saskatchewan. We're putting some additional resources into pathology, into other areas to make sure that we do have the necessary teams built up so that we can address those waits and make sure through the great work being done by the Saskatchewan Cancer Agency to make sure that we are prioritizing patients and getting them the timely access to the health care they need. And we're going to continue to make those investments as much as we can.
Thank you very much. Going to microphone number 2, please.
Good morning. Tony Head, Deputy Mayor, City of Prince Albert.
Thank you.
Last year, I came here and asked that a percentage of the last year's budget surplus be invested in helping my people. that be invested in dealing with the issues identified by the TRC, that it be invested into reconciliation. Just to be clear, I didn't actually think the government would do that. I'd hoped that some of the suffering I see in my city, I had hoped that some of the attention would be paid to the reconciliation efforts. Instead, I see the suffering continue. My people continue to die in the streets of exposure, of addictions, of mental illness, without access to supports, without access to resources, and without access to care. I know that you all know this. I also believe that all of our communities in our province are only as strong and robust as their weakest residents. Therefore, from my perspective, we are collectively failing to thrive. So my question is this: when will my government consider building actual strong communities? When will those that struggle the most become a real priority?
Thank you.
I'll maybe open this up a bit.
Hey, Mr. Premier?
Maybe I just make a couple of opening comments on this. And it was a few months ago that we saw Minister Makowski, our Minister of Social Services, come out with a plan building supports around homelessness. I think it was about a $40 million announcement that he had in that space. Sitting beside him at that announcement was our Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and that was Tim McLeod, and he was also bringing forward a $50 million update to our mental health and addiction action plan. And I think that was an understanding that those announcements were made together, that there is a connection here. There's a connection that we need to put some significant funding behind, of which there was $90 million that particular day. And there's a connection here that we need to work with our partners, often who are our municipal partners, but also third-party partners that are able to offer some of the services ultimately that are going to provide pathways to recovery for our community members, and I would say all too often for our family members that have slipped into, maybe had a mental health crisis and have unfortunately slipped into a life of addictions. I'll ask each of the ministers, this one might take just a little bit longer, but I think it's an absolute priority that we discuss the government's direction on this, where we are opening up avenues for recovery in what is called a ROSC system, recovery-oriented system of care. We are opening up that capacity and those access points. There's the urgent care center here that's complete on North Albert Street in Regina. Part of that is about accessing mental health professionals and addiction services, meaning those 500 intensive addictions beds. 500 is the current target. I don't think that's going to be the end. We're likely going to have to build more than that, but that's our target to achieve as quickly as we can. Secondary to that, and I see Rhonda Blackmore here, is we also need to work together in funding law enforcement agencies, whether they be municipal law enforcement agencies, whether they be our RCMP agencies, or whether they be our Saskatchewan Marshal Services to support both of the aforementioned two law enforcement agencies, to work together to ensure that we are removing this poison, these drugs from our community, from our streets. And law enforcement is going to be part of that. We are eventually going to need some changes and some tweaks to the Criminal Code of Canada, but when that happens, we will have the law enforcement available here in Saskatchewan to ensure that that can be enforced. So first is to provide those supports and those avenues for all that maybe have slipped into that, unfortunately, that life of addictions. We are doing that. We are building that capacity. We are building that access. Second is to ensure that we do have the available law enforcement to ensure that our communities are safe. So sorry that this one's going to take just maybe a little bit longer, and I beg your indulgence, but I think it's an absolute priority conversation for us to be having as a provincial government. Tony's right. We need to work together on this point in supporting those in our community, but also ensuring that our communities are safe. So in just a minute or less, if you have anything to add, Tim, Jean, or Paul Merriman on the policing front.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Premier, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Head, for the question. It's absolutely a critical piece of the work that we're doing right now, and I would just maybe add to what the Premier said about the expansion of capacity and the treatment for mental health and addictions. Upstream from the addictions piece, we have the mental health piece, and the investments that we're making in mental health, $438 million this year. As the Premier mentioned, specifically focusing on mental health, we've got a distinct entrance in the new urgent care center that's going to be accessible for individuals who are accessing services for mental health. We've got rapid access counseling available for adults and for youth who are battling mental health challenges. We've got police and crisis teams. We've got mental health capacity building in our schools for children, all to address the mental health challenges so that they don't become addictions challenges. And then as we said earlier, and as the Premier touched on, for those individuals who have fallen into a life of addiction, we have the recovery-oriented system of care that is addressing the underlying needs, the underlying causes of the addiction, not just treating the addiction, but treating the individual in a holistic way, wrapping supports around them to ensure that they get the treatment that they specifically need in a very holistic and individualistic way.
Thank you.
And, yeah, just quickly as I can, the provincial approach to homelessness the Premier talked about, that work is underway, building on the work that has happened previously, both on the shelter side, the supported living side, the complex needs emergency shelter, new facilities in our major centers. Just a lot of work going on and working alongside our CBO partners, many of them Indigenous-led, for community outreach to help individuals where they are, where they happen to be at the time. We want to find through Minister McLeod's work, as well as on our side of things in social services, finding different pathways for someone to get the help they need if they choose. Filling gaps, this past budget, a small item, but something we've heard from many of our CBO partners is something as simple as providing funding for ID so they can access income assistance support. So again, working on the housing side of things as well. So quite a few investments. Could certainly go on and on, but I know our time is up. Thanks.
Thank you. Minister Merriman.
Thank you. Just very quickly, that's why we're on the policing side of things. We're making sure that when our police officers do go out and there is a mental health and addiction issue, that we have support for those police officers, that we have a mental health worker to be able to deal with that, because it's not always a criminal element, and we want to see if there are options for Minister McLeod's recovery centers to be able to deal with those individuals. We also want to make sure that we're putting more boots on the ground, that if it is criminal activity, that we react to that extremely quickly. That's why we've increased funding to the RCMP, municipalities, First Nation policing, and our Marshal Service that'll be up and running in 2026. So we have we have a better response time, and we have the right officer at the right place.
Thank you very much. I did get a request from AV that if we could, I know we're dealing with sound issues, when the ministers are answering, if you can speak as directly into your mic as possible, it might help us with our sound on the stage. I'm going to go to microphone number 3. I will say we've got just about half an hour left, and so if you want a question asked, make sure you get in line now because we do have a hard stop. Microphone number 3, can I get your name and your municipality, please?
Leanne Kuski, Deputy Mayor, Cornack.
Thank you.
We have a coal-burning power plant in our community, and the federal government has mandated the closure in 2030. Provincial government says that isn't going to happen. A lot of the employees at these two places are leaving. They're getting jobs within SaskPower, or they're quitting and going elsewhere. And we're concerned that this power plant is going to close before 2030 because there are no employees left to run it. I'd like to know if you could give us an update on what's happening between the federal government and the provincial government with regards to this concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leanne, for the question. Certainly this is a top-of-mind issue for the government and for SaskPower, not only ensuring that we're there to support those workers that have done a tremendous job of working for this province and for SaskPower for many years, but ensuring that we have the ability to provide power to the people of Saskatchewan and the industries that are investing in Saskatchewan. I guess the most recent developments, we have indicated our opposition to the clean electricity regulations. The way the clean electricity regulations are written as of today is that essentially for baseload power by 2035, we will essentially have 3 options. One will be nuclear, which we are investigating whether or not that's a possibility for Saskatchewan. The other would be baseload hydropower, and as you can imagine in today's world, developing a new hydroelectric dam, flooding a river valley is likely not going to happen. And the other is carbon capture on natural gas, which in theory technically is possible, but nobody in the world is doing it yet. And so we have to make some very major decisions over the next number of years with a federal law that really is impossible technically from a feasibility perspective and fiscally impossible for this province. So we are going to take an all of the above approach, including running our existing generation fleet as long as possible. But certainly what is not making that easy is just the uncertainty that we have at a federal level. So we'll keep engaging with the federal government, but we have formally submitted our opposition to the clean electricity regulations, and we frankly hope that they don't just rewrite the legislation, that they scrap it entirely and start from the beginning, and include provinces in the consultations.
Thank you, Minister Duncan.
A little bit of summary on this.
Certainly, Mr. Premier.
This has come up for a number of years, and herein lies the challenge of some of the timelines that have been put out by the federal government when it comes to transitioning to away from coal to something else. They want that done by 2030. The something else for us in Saskatchewan, we really don't have a lot of other options. Industry is asking for a lower emission profile in our electrical grid overall. So as we move forward through the decades, I think we do need to satisfy industry so that we can continue to attract the BHP potash mine, the K+S potash mine, the canola crush plants that we have, the uranium mines. They're all asking the question, and so we do need to reduce our emissions over time. The challenge is with the 2030 date is exactly brought up in that question. If we aren't able to bring on nuclear technology until 2034, 2037, those types of dates, what do we do with our workforce in that gap period? If we're able to actually run the assets that we have out, not only is it more affordable for what we pay on our power bill each and every month, because we're going to utilize the length of asset for the entirety of what it was planned to be utilized for, but we're going to be able to keep that workforce on with a very solid and robust and planned transition to maybe retrain them so that they could be then employed in our nuclear plants. When you have that 4-year gap from 2030 to maybe 2034, or 7 years to 2037, you can't transition that workforce in a structured way. And so I would say that this is something that is alive and well, a conversation that is alive and well in this government's table. It's alive and well when we engage with the federal government, not as receptive maybe as I would like to see it, which is why we've made some of the pretty extreme decisions that we have made in the last while. But it's also alive and well with some other partners that we have, and I'd say notably some of the partners that are actually actively working in the plants in Estevan and Coronach.
Thank you, Premier Moe. I'm going to go to microphone number 1, and then I have 4, then 3.
Abby Bashara, councillor with the town of La Ronge.
Thank you.
In La Ronge, construction is underway of an 80-bed long-term care facility. It's an incredible catalyst for growth and the wellness for our community and region. We have abundant job vacancies from service level, entry level, senior level professional positions. Small businesses, large employers, and your own local ministry staff share their challenges to fill those vacancies with me. La Ronge has faced a housing crisis for over 20 years, resulting in a lack of housing stock in general, and specifically, housing for professionals. We have a near zero vacancy rate and consistently rising house prices. We are a community of just 2,500, and yet we service a wide region in the north with our amenities. The town of La Ronge has invested in servicing studies, hiring appropriate expertise, looking forward in our policies and in our plans. We've applied to all federal and provincial programs that may contribute to the solution for this issue. So many factors place us at a disadvantage for attracting private development on the scale that we need.
Could you restate the last 5 seconds of your questions, please?
Yes. I want to ask, what is the province prepared to do to dismantle its silos and coordinate the supports or partnerships to meet the housing needs for a small yet mighty community like La Ronge that are the foundation of growth in this province?
Thank you very much.
I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
Okay. Hope I have some colleagues that follow in. It was great meeting with you yesterday, and we had a probably half an hour, 45-minute talk on these very issues, the challenges facing La Ronge and surrounding area, but specifically La Ronge with its population base trying to support you know, the other communities in and around La Ronge. And it's unfortunate. You had talked a little bit about yesterday what it costs to develop a lot in La Ronge, maybe compared to the rest of Saskatchewan, and the expense that it has. You know, we're looking at this new federal program is brand new. We're not sure whether it's going to help or not. It's all about housing. And, you know, when I went to an FPT meeting, I said this earlier today, I was at an FPT meeting, and it was amazing how many jurisdictions housing was the major issue. I had said it at that time in our province, it's all infrastructure, not just housing. The federal government has picked up on the housing piece, and in the latest budget, it mentions housing in about 4 or 5 different areas. We're trying to decipher through how that impacts Saskatchewan. We know the numbers aren't nearly as big as what they had put forward in the ISIP program, which did have silos, but I will tell you that over time, those silos were broke down. There was a lot of money for public transportation, for example, and communities were able to, after time, use some of that money for other programs. We need to see what this new housing program, it seems to be very prescriptive, which is a problem, and whether it will fit our communities, we're not sure. But we'll certainly be working with that, and I know my ministry has more briefings with the federal deputy minister as of Friday as we try and figure out what this new housing program, which I certainly hope will help La Ronge into the future. But as far as any specific program moving forward, we don't have one. The ISIP program was the one that would help us with water and sewer. It may not be the vertical build of housing, but it was often the horizontal issues that needed to go in to supply housing to various parts of the province.
Thank you very much. Minister MacLeod.
Thanks. I'll just add to that, and thank you again for the question. I know, Abby, we chatted a bit about this in the dialogue session earlier. The Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Social Services sent their deputy ministers up to La Ronge to specifically look into the challenges that you're talking about. We're very well aware of the challenges. We're very excited about the construction of the long-term care centre in La Ronge. The $27 million in this year's budget invested in the beginning of the construction of that project. So we're very in tune with the challenges there, but obviously all very much looking forward to and excited for the opening of that facility and making sure that as the construction of the facility happens, the necessary supports around it to support the workforce that will be working there is happening at the same time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to microphone number 4. Can I get your name and your municipality, please?
Daniel Powder, Hamlet of Stony Rapids.
Thank you.
I have a concern. The concern I have is that there's no communication between Points North and Stony Rapids, and that highway is being used by 4 communities, and then also that we need a new community hall because the hall that we have is built in 1970s, and the capacity is not well being maintained there. So we need that, and we also need a new dock as well, a commercial dock, so that we can serve these 3 barging companies in Lake Athabasca.
Thank you. Yeah. Minister Duncan.
Thanks for the question. We certainly are making at SaskTel significant investments in our cellular network. We have about over 1,000 towers now. We're in the process of upgrading a significant number of those to 5G. I think our budget overall for this year for our infrastructure at SaskTel will be well north of $400 million. I don't know specifically where Stony Rapids falls in terms of whether it needs an upgrade to 5G or whether or not it's an issue of actually having the infrastructure in place. So maybe if we can follow up with you afterwards and we can get some more information to you.
Thank you very much. Microphone number 3. Could I get your name and your municipality, please?
Yes, Dave Wright from the Village of Loon Lake, Councillor.
Thank you.
Personal question to Premier Moe. During the pandemic, we had a real bullying effect come down the pipe from you for the non-vaccinated. And as we head into an election year, I want to know, do you want to apologize for telling us that no more Mr. Nice Guy and we're going to have to travel to centers to independent testing and so on? It bruised a lot of people, and there's a fair number of us unvaccinated. We're going to head into another pandemic, and we want to know how you're going to handle it if we vote you in again.
Thank you very much.
I would, have I got my mic on here? I would say that we are going to, if we're faced with that again, and I hope that we never are, and I hope none of our descendants ever are. There was one in Saskatchewan, I believe, in 1917 when we had the Spanish flu. There was a number of decisions that were made at that point in time that were equally as challenging and difficult as the decisions, I would say, that the people seated in front of you in our caucus were tasked with making as we found our way through the most recent pandemic. And we made every effort to find a balance. We were faced, just for context, what we were faced with at that point in time was about 79 ICU beds in the province and 135 people in them, just with COVID. Never mind those that may have had a heart attack or those other 50 or 60 people that absolutely needed an ICU bed as well. And that is really the precipitous of where some of the decisions came from the people you see in front of you, and the decisions ultimately that I communicated. And we made every effort when it came to having proof of test policies in place so that people would not lose their place of employment. We made every effort to accommodate all, but to ensure that we were providing the very environment for safe gatherings, safe communities in a time when I don't think anyone had a lot of answers. And so what I truly hope coming out of the last pandemic is that we don't have to face those types of questions and that type of a situation again. And that's why you're seeing decisions being made up here that involve an over 10% increase to our healthcare system, increasing the number of ICU beds that we have in our healthcare system, beyond what maybe we need on a daily basis, but so that they're available should we have a surge in capacity at some point in time. That's why you're seeing the over 1,000 nurses that have been hired into our healthcare system just this past year. Working in over 1,000 Canadian graduate nurses, over 250 international graduate nurses as well are working in our facilities to manage and deliver healthcare services that you expect, that people in communities that I represent expect, and working alongside our partners in other provinces, because the challenges that we face through the pandemic were not exclusive to Saskatchewan. The challenges that we face in a post-pandemic world, in human resource challenges, are not exclusive to Saskatchewan. Other provinces, all other provinces and territories are faced with the same challenges across the nation. And I would say equally to the earlier question, when it comes to some of the discussions that are happening and some of the investment that is happening, over $500 million a year, around the mental health and addictions that we are seeing in our communities and in our families, is most certainly a sign that this government is investing and investing heavily in the area of healthcare, in building capacity in that area, so that we can all receive the treatment and the pathways to a better life that we would expect of a province that is has a growing economy, has a strong and growing economy, has a strong and growing population, and with that comes expectations, and we're making those investments in healthcare. So we made the decisions that we did with the information we had.
Thank you, Premier Moe. I'm taking that applause for myself. Thank you, Premier Moe. Can I get microphone number 2? Could I get your name and your municipality, please?
Thank you. Trent Mitchell, City of Melfort, Councillor. I hear talk of the harm reduction, housing for homeless, addiction treatment beds. But what I don't hear, and I recognize this is somewhat of a federal issue, what we're doing to take the drugs off the street, what we're doing to hold those drug dealers accountable for the millions of dollars that we are as a society and communities paying in trying to get those drugs or to get those people help. How are we preventing new addicts? So I'm not sure if the Provincial Marshal Service has got jurisdiction and a mandate to help get these drugs off the street, but I guess I'm asking the question in terms of what's the approach? Thank you.
Bronwyn or Paul, whichever.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks. It's a good question. There's a few aspects of this. One, we want to make sure that, and Minister MacLeod and previous to that, Minister Henley, did an amazing job of setting up people that are having some mental health and addiction challenges and how to deal with that. When they cross that criminal line, law enforcement has to step in. But that's why, as I previously mentioned, we want to step in with our PAC teams, which we have somebody from mental health and addictions working with the police to be able to treat the underlying issue. If they do cross the line, we have to make sure that those penalties are enforced, and it's not, as it was brought up before, a revolving door of criminals coming in and out of our system. A lot of it has to do with the federal government and their bail reform that they're doing. They have changed the rules on this and are letting people out way too soon. We've opposed that as a government. The Marshal Service will be a complement to the existing RCMP, municipal police, and our First Nation policing to make sure that if somebody is crossed the line, that we are dealing with those drug dealers, and we're basically putting them at the full extent of the law that they will be prosecuted.
Thank you, Minister Merriman. I'm sorry. Well, Minister Eyre, did you have a comment?
Well, I think it's also important, I mean, to recognize that, and this came up earlier when Minister Merriman and I were in the dialogue session this morning, I mean, concern around just this and where these worlds collide. And I think on the safe supply side, I mean, we've seen the issues with the policies, federal with, for example, the province of BC and what that's doing to the safe supply and where it's showing up, this safe supply. And why that underscores so importantly to us, you know, why the response has to be on the rehabilitation side and not the facilitating side, if you like, of the supply, and how important those wraparounds are that don't really enable criminality in the first place. I mean, the BC model, the Oregon model, you know, what we're seeing around decriminalization is extremely worrying and has an effect on every province. And that's why we have to take the response we have to counter some of that, because it's truly toxic, and there are impacts across the country when one jurisdiction takes a certain approach.
Thank you, Minister.
I just would add very quickly, and this is somewhat off of the stems off the comments I had made earlier, which are really threefold. One, we need to provide supports. Our Minister of Mental Health and Addictions is working hard to provide those recovery supports, recovery-focused supports. Two, from the provincial perspective, we need to invest in our law enforcement. There's more people here. I would say that the challenges that we're seeing in our community, whether they be drug-related or associated with drugs, which is property crime and all of the other things that we see, we do need more law enforcement, and we're currently working on that. And last but not least, we will need to have a little bit of movement with respect to the Criminal Code of Canada so that it's addressing the challenges that we're seeing in our community today. Minister Eyre and other ministers of justice across the nation have joined in various points of communication with the federal minister on whether it be repeat offenders, whether it be changing the Criminal Code of Canada to protect our police officers more than maybe they currently are today, and we certainly continue to stand by that. So that is going to have to be somewhat of a document that's going to need some changes as we move forward through the next 3, 5, and 10 years. At the end of the day, the goal here is the streets, living in the streets and homelessness is the most vulnerable place you can be. It should not be viewed as being the most comfortable or safe place to be. The best place for you to be and the safest place to be if you have unfortunately have entered a life of addictions is in one of the recovery beds that we are currently building. And that is where the focus of what we are working towards is to provide everyone an opportunity for that pathway to recovery. And unfortunately, if you're not going to choose that, we can't have you breaking the law in the streets of our communities, and that's where the enforcement will come in. And so it's going to take some time to work through this, but those are the 3 points. Is first, we need the capacity and the supports available and accessible. Second, we need the law enforcement supports in our communities. And third, last but not least, we will need some federal changes to the Criminal Code of Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. I'm going to go to microphone number 1. Could I get your name, your community, and try not to be too shy?
I won't be.
All right.
Greg Dion, the Mayor of Prince Albert. I'm asking the government's help to have a meeting with SARM and SUMA. We have a growing problem across our provinces where the cities are building infrastructure that are used by everyone in our province, but are being paid for our residents. And I'll give you a quick example of our community. We're building a new rink structure with with a swimming pool and 2 rinks at a cost of $130 million. Our RMs, we've tried to negotiate with them. They don't contribute, they won't tax for us to help pay for these facilities. But they advertise to beat 60, it's cheaper to live in the RMs because you don't pay these taxes. So unfortunately in our city, because we couldn't negotiate, we put a free structure in to collect from them, which has caused some rift. And it's just not the city of PA, it's every city. La Ronge, we're hubs. You know, Saskatoon.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. So I'm asking the province, will they at least consider negotiating with us to see how we can solve this growing problem?
Great. Just inside a minute. Great. Minister.
Thank you, Mayor Dion, for that question without an answer from me, probably. But no, certainly, as far as your ask is, can we have SUMA, SARM, GR officials, or whoever sit down and try and solve the problem? Because this is not just a Prince Albert issue. It's not a Moose Jaw issue. It's not, an Assiniboia issue. Although Assiniboia would probably be a very good example for any of you that haven't been down to Assiniboia and seen the new rink, and how not only the community of Assiniboia, but surrounding RMs, and Minister Merritt could talk to this much better than I can, but there would be a classic example of urban-rural working together for the betterment of all the citizens in the area. It is a state-of-the-art class rink, which actually won an award last night at the banquet, and they all had their Rebels jerseys on. But as far as setting up a conversation, we would have no problem doing that. But I truly believe, again, the answer comes from the municipalities that are connected rather than any government trying to dictate.
Just on that as well, just to follow up, you're talking about really sharing in the costs of municipal infrastructure, largely recreation infrastructure. I'd say we run into it a little bit with the municipal portion or the local portion of hospital funding at times. I don't disagree that we shouldn't have a conversation in that space. However, I would say that we are in maybe an area now where we are losing a much larger infrastructure partner, and that's with the federal budget yesterday with the removal of the ISIP funding. That is, if there isn't proper parameters and leniency in how we can make applications for broader necessary municipal infrastructure like water, wastewater, potentially landfills, which was in ISIP, or even fire halls, we have a much bigger challenge in front of us with the loss of a federal partner in helping us fund our municipal infrastructure. So certainly an important conversation to have at the local level, but we have a larger conversation that I think we mutually have to have with our federal partner.
Thank you, Premier Moe. Microphone number 4. Could I get your name and your municipality, please?
Glenarson, Village of Vanguard.
Thank you.
My question is, with getting to more and more of these bigger emergencies, the cost of the radios are getting too expensive for the smaller communities to add more radios, and that increases poorer communication, which then can lead to more injuries or deaths. Thank you.
Minister Merriman.
Thanks very.
Microphone, please.
Thanks very much for the question. This was something that is federally mandated on the Next Gen 911, which has an increased cost to everybody on this. There are a couple of options with this. One, you could certainly go on your own, but the SPSA will also sit down and assist you and work. We can pay for the capital of this and work with the municipality to make sure that they are connected to the new service that is out there that was set out by the CRTC. So I'll have somebody come over and touch base with you and see where we can assist.
Thank you. So we do have people standing at mics 4, 3, and 2. We're just about out of time. The Premier's indicated we will finish those. So if you're standing at a mic now, be patient. We'll get to your question. Those will probably be all the questions that we're able to take for the day. Microphone number 3. Could I get your name and your municipality, please?
Hello, I'm Lisa Drake, councillor in the town of Cutknife.
Thank you.
So we had heard from the Premier a few days ago, or earlier this week, that the population in Saskatchewan is the highest that has ever been. And with that, we have more children in our school system than ever before. And we also have more special needs children than ever before. Our school divisions are working on bare bones budgets, and our teachers and other staff are frustrated. The cuts that were made in 2017 were devastating to our school divisions, and they have not recovered. The education budget does not cover what is needed to efficiently educate children in this province. How is the government planning on negotiating on education when the budget does not reflect the needs of our school divisions?
Thank you. Minister Cockrell.
Thanks, Randy. And thanks for the question, Lisa. You know, certainly we are seeing more students than we ever have in the province before. I've spoken with many folks in this room and with the 27 school divisions around the province. You know, for years, our student count grew by about 2,000 per year, every year, which is great. But over the last couple of years, we've seen the student count in this province go up by 5,000 a year. And a lot of those students are focused in our larger urban municipalities. And certainly we're addressing some of these challenges through the capital investments that we've been making. You know, the announcement of 9 new schools being built this year, in addition, 2 major renovations as well, in addition to the 15 major capital projects that we have all around the province. But you know, when it comes to funding the teachers, the EAs, the support staff in our schools, we've made a significant step forward in this year's budget, nearly a 9% increase in school operating funding that goes directly to those 27 school divisions operating schools in each one of your communities. When it comes to supporting students with significant needs, special needs, whether that be intellectual or physical or health needs, we have obviously increased that part of the budget as well, even more, 14% in this year's budget. But the key thing, and I mentioned this earlier, is really the multi-year funding agreement that we've now signed with the 27 school divisions. To commit to those school divisions that government is going to be there with a floor of classroom supports funding over the next 4 years. We've done this in the post-secondary sector. We're now doing it in the pre-K to 12 sector. Again, to ensure that those school divisions have the resources at a minimum level, and again, we hope to increase those supports over the next number of years. You know, when it comes to supporting the growth that we're seeing in this province, I think with additional capital dollars, with additional operational dollars, government is there to support. And when it comes to negotiations, I'll just share with the room, I think we've made significant progress over the last couple of days specifically, again, being back at the bargaining table, and we look forward to getting an agreement soon.
Thank you, Minister Cockrell. I'll go to microphone 2. Could I get your name and your municipality, please?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Rebecca Utitoju from White City, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you.
I want to applaud the government through the speech of our Premier about trying to cut down the wait time when people have major health issues. But as we all know that 1 week is like a year for someone waiting for surgery or life-threatening issue. You also mentioned the effort of the government bringing health professionals from Philippines and other areas, part of the world. But I wonder, and I want to ask, if the government ever thought of actually looking inwards as well. I'm not saying stop what we are doing by bringing in additional, because we really, really need more doctors, more nurses, and health professionals. But we have some in Saskatchewan that came on their own volition, thinking, oh, this is a good place for me. What are we doing about those?
First, I would just ask Everett maybe a short comment on our health human resource plan and the points that are involved in that around training and retention and whatnot. But then, Jeremy, just a note on some of the work that you're doing with some of our professional regulators.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Mayor. And before I turn it over to Minister Harrison, the Premier's right. You know, we are taking an all hands on deck approach when it comes to building capacity in our healthcare system. So that means further expansion of medical training seats and residency seats here in our province in Saskatchewan. Additional bursaries and incentives to try to recruit, retain, incentivize, and retain healthcare workers in our province. A new agreement with the Saskatchewan Medical Association to make sure that our doctors are competitively compensated when it comes to salaries and benefits, and making sure that we're doing everything we can. The new incentive programs, the Rural Physician Incentive Program as an example, other initiatives that we are looking at to make sure that Saskatchewan is the most attractive place for people that are in healthcare, whether they're doctors or nurse practitioners or other healthcare providers, that Saskatchewan is the place that they want to be. And making sure that we're maximizing the people that we do have here through the Ministry of Advanced Education, the expansion of more training seats in our province. So we're churning out more graduates in healthcare fields to be able to fill these vacancies. But just on the credentialing piece, I'll turn it over to Minister Harrison to talk about some of the work we're doing on that front.
Sure. Well, thanks so much. That is a really good question and a very timely question as well. You've probably seen around the city here in Regina. You'd see them in Saskatoon, Moose Jaw, PA as well. Billboards, advertisements on buses, at bus stops, with a simple message. If you have a credential that you have obtained from outside of Saskatchewan or outside of Canada and you want it recognized, call us. And what we have done at the Ministry of Immigration and Career Training, and we are leading Canada in this space, is set up an entire unit dedicated to individually working with those who have obtained a credential from outside of the province to get that credential recognized. And that means working directly with our regulators. That means getting rid of red tape in the regulatory process while maintaining standards. As an example, on the nursing field, we had a 2-year bridging program that had been really a standard in place for some period of time. Working with SaskPoly, working with our regulator, working with the Ministry of Health, the SHA, Immigration and Career Training, we now have a 14-week bridging period. Nurses who have a credential from outside of Canada can get that recognized in that period of time. That's just the start. And we are going to really endeavor to work with every individual who has a credential. We will work with them to get that credential recognized, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in the trades, whether it be in any other field. And this is going to be a real game changer, I think, for newcomers and from those who are outside of Saskatchewan that have moved here.
Thank you very much. I think we have our last 2 questions on microphone 4. Were you both standing when I made the call before? I thought so. Okay, go ahead. The first one, your name and your municipality.
Kaylee Strand, Village of Calder.
Thank you.
Currently, there are over 1,000 pediatric patients in the province without a pediatric GI to oversee their care and treatment. This is causing stress and sometimes financial hardship to families and their children. Some families have even had to travel out of province to receive care while also having to pay out of their own pocket for hotels, gas, and meals. It was also recently made known that there are currently 15 pediatric vacancies for specialists working at the Children's Hospital in Saskatoon: cardiology, emergency room specialists, respirology, neurology. What is the province going to do to ensure that the children of our province receive the care they need here at home?
Thank you.
Hi, Kaylee. Thanks for the question there. A couple of things on the pediatric gastroenterology situation right now. We've got our teams at the Ministry of Health with the SHA and with the Sask Health Recruitment Agency working very hard to fill those vacancies. It indicated not that long ago that it's my understanding that we are very close to having a couple of potential hires when it comes to pediatric gastroenterology. So we're just working our way through that, and once that is solidified, we'll be able to announce that. And of course, working to the full staffing to hiring 3 of those at the Children's Hospital. On the second point of your question, just a point of clarity, or clarification, there are not 15 pediatric specialist vacancies at the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital in Saskatoon. There's currently about 4.5 that we're working through getting filled. There are 14 vacancies. Those are province-wide. That's the number that we're hearing. But 6 of those 14 positions are actually right now in the active hiring process. And we'll have those people signed up in the very near future, and then work continues to fill the remaining vacancies. I think there have been some applicants there for those positions, and as they are filled, we'll make announcements to make sure that people are informed that vacancies have been filled and services have been restored at those hospitals in those communities. So thanks for the questions.
Thank you, Minister Hindley. And last question of the day goes to microphone number 4. Can I get your name and your municipality, please?
Yeah, Shelley Boutin-Gervais, councillor with the town of Battleford.
Thank you.
So I'd like kind of like an update. We were given a couple of announcements quite some time ago, and I'm just wondering what's happening with the RCMP training depot that's supposed to be going into North Battleford, as well as the status on Battleford's district care.
Thank you.
I can certainly comment on the RCMP. We've had a very successful agreement with the RCMP on
Minister Merriman, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I get you to speak into the microphone and a little bit louder? They're having trouble.
You need me to be louder, Randy?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
We've had a very successful agreement with the RCMP to be able to recruit more individuals into the province. Assistant Commissioner Blackmore, who was here earlier today, we have an agreement that we have our money on the table as far as bringing more recruits into Saskatchewan. We need the federal government to be able to step up and do their part to be able to bring RCMP. We have about a 15% vacancy across the province. We're somewhat in the middle across Canada as far as vacancies. Some are as low as 10, some are as high as 25. We need some more boots on the ground. That's why we're investing in the RCMP. This letter in Assistant Commissioner Blackmore is a game changer for her. This gives her a lot of leverage with the federal government and with her counterparts to be able to bring RCMP into the province. But we're also increasing our funding to other police forces to make sure that we have the full complement on that. And I think I'll get Minister Henley to comment on the other question you had.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question, Shelley. On the Battlefords, the new LTC project there, that was announced in the 2023 budget, I believe is when that was. I don't have just in front of me what the current status of that is. And there's a number of these projects that are underway. We've been fortunate over our terms in government to have built 5 new hospitals, 60 new long-term care facilities, plus all the other ones that are underway right now. We've heard about L'Orange, the long-term care facility there. There's currently construction on a new hospital in Weyburn, for example. Other work being done in communities like Grenfell and Estevan. It does take a little bit of time to get those projects up and running in terms of site selection of the land, making sure that there's a needs assessment done to determine how many beds are needed, what the services would be. We'll check with the officials, though, and make sure that you can get an update on what the current status of that particular project is, where it is in terms of that, in terms of completion, and we'll provide you with the latest updates. Thanks for the question.
Thank you very much. For the last word, I'm going to turn it over to the Premier.
I would just close with how I started, with saying thank you. Thank you for your engagement here just over the course of the last of an hour and a little bit. We greatly appreciate it. And I speak on behalf of not only Cabinet, but our entire governing caucus when I say thank you for your questions. They're very helpful. And they do allow us to actually kind of double down with our efforts that we had put forward, Minister Harpower had put forward in our most recent budget, which was entitled Classrooms, Care and Communities. Classrooms received a 9% operational lift. Our healthcare system received over a 10% lift, and our community funding, our municipal revenue sharing, was up 14%. Those are significant increases that I would say, and I did say Monday when I was here, are only possible due to the strength of a growing and prosperous economy, of which we are working very hard not to create, but to create the environment for that to occur. And so, notwithstanding the challenges that we face, and many of those came out today, we are committed to one, putting that funding in place like we did in this most recent budget, and two, I think in order for that funding to be as effective as possible is to work with all of our partners, primarily our local community leaders, in ensuring that funding is actually meeting the challenges that our Saskatchewan families are facing. And so thank you very much for today, and thank you for what you do each and every day as a community leader in the community that you serve.
Thank you very much. Before we excuse our guests, I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the SUMA board and the SUMA membership. I know how busy you are. I'm sorry. I know how busy you are. The people in this room know what it's like to serve your community and the sacrifice that it is for you and your family. So we want to say thank you for your service to our community and thank you for your time. Let's give them one more round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Green. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you, Minister. Sure. Thanks for coming.
Good job, Randy.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you,
Mr. Mayor. Take care.
Thanks, Randy.
Mr. Collins, thank you so much. All right, if